Okay. Testing, testing. I believe that we're live. Okay. All right, we're live now. Okay. How, Takiapi, hello, relatives. I want to say hello to you. Good evening. I'm going to do a reading today, but I'm going to do a different reading today. I'm going to do a reading out of this one called Everyday Affirmations. Okay, there it is. So I don't know this book very well. I usually do the readings out of this book that I know very well. So this has definitely taken me out of my comfort zone. But I will be doing a reading tomorrow when I'll be on the road tomorrow for quite a bit. So I'll be doing a reading tomorrow as well. So I always like to get going by offering uh, smudge. Smudge. So I'll go ahead and do that. And I'm going to turn this fan on. Sorry about that. Because I got to be honest with you that I can get nervous when I do these readings. I just want to do a good job. I want to say things and read something that is going to be helpful to other people. So I have the tendency to apply some pressure on myself. But again, I always say that I have no idea what the reading is going to say, none. I do that on purpose so that I can be outside of my comfort zone. And the only preparation, I really didn't think that I was going to do a reading today. I was actually on my way to the library, literally started my car because it's cold today, and then went out and shut it off, took my jacket on, and it says, well, I think it's a good time to do a reading. So I think I will do that. And so the purpose of that is to take myself out of my comfort zone. So I do get nervous about it. What can I say? Um, but that's okay. And if you're watching this from Facebook live or on YouTube, please like and share. Share my channel. I just started on YouTube, so I don't. So this won't have any editing on it. I just love the fact I want to keep it raw. I want to keep it uncut. I don't want to edit. I want you to see me in real time dealing with the reading. And again, this book kind of scares the pants off of me because I don't know it very well. So I'm gonna go. Hi, Chris. How you doing? Good to see ya. So, and they're always really short. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do the reading and just do my best. And hopefully you can relate to it. Hopefully you can get something out of it. Um, and yeah, I'll just take it from there. I'll just quit messing around. Okay, so it says January 17th, the stars still shine. Are there stars above you now? If you cannot see them, try to envision them in your mind. They are always above you, whirling in ancient arcs that have seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. Imprints of fading, brilliant light are brightest when it is darkest, with all other lights turned low. While the dark can inspire fear, it can also reveal the most beautiful and intricate galaxies of the universe. The path of the stars is long and constant. Let them guide you. Okay, so that's a real interesting one. You know, in our philosophy, our way of life, um, we acknowledge all living beings and all. How should I put this? I'm so used to using the language that I know that I'm not sure how to describe it. Well, I'll just keep it to stars. We refer to the stars as like an oyate, as a nation. Like we feel as though that they are life, um, that they are a nation. So we will often say we chakpe oyate. the same goes true with like the human nation, the how shall I say it, the two-leggeds, um, and we acknowledge everything like the plant nations, um, the four-leggeds, the wing nations. So that's the philosophy that I'm going to be sharing from. And so anything that has to do with the stars always kind of fascinates me because as a youngster, it was always really awesome to be able to um, watch the stars and wonder about them and kind of dream like what it was like to be out with them and to let my imagination sort of wander. And that was really that was something as a child that that later on in life that I would start to do again. I went through a really really hard time in life, and I know a lot of people can relate to this. Um, I went through a very long time, like a large portion of my life, where there was difficulty after difficulty after difficulty after difficulty. And it got to a point where I think I ran out of questions, and I just felt really unimportant. I didn't feel important at all. My life was really at a turning point where it could have gotten a lot worse, or it was that time for me to do things that were going to turn my life around. And that was very, very difficult within itself, but I was pretty much used to difficulty all my life. Nothing was ever, ever easy. Um, Life was always hard. But I'll never forget it is that this was just the beginning of my healing time. And you have to remember, relatives, is that when we think of time, I always like to think in times of not necessarily time on the computer or in a watch or on a clock, but they say that there's a different way of looking at time, and that's spiritual time. And that spiritual time looks much different from the time that we as men and women, as a people, as two-leggeds, has structured itself around, because we really do that. You know, time is important. Time is precious. Time is a gift. But there's also another part of that that says we're running out of time. Like, we don't have time. Hurry up, speed up. And so to understand and to involve myself into different type of teachings has been a part of that healing process that I kind of just brushed over. But the reason why I bring that up is because there was a time when, I was on drugs. I was the active alcoholic, and this isn't an anti-drug or anti-alcoholic alcohol message, relatives. It's just not. But I'm just being honest. And so I had hit a low point and lost absolutely everything. And when I mean everything, relatives, I mean everything, okay? And when you think of everything and you picture blank, like nothing, just know that that's what was left over. That's all I had, other than the fact that I was still alive. And so that's the healing part that started that I entered into. And the reason why I bring that up is because this is about the stars. Is that up until that point, I basically have been a criminal all my life, which is true. even as a youngster. Um, I'm very, very depression, like all my life. Very low self worth, very extremely low self esteem. Um, Very difficult for me to let people in and to get to know me. Pretty much impossible. Very difficult for me to feel like I could get to know somebody else. Yes, I had friends um, growing up, but it was always keeping people at a arm's length. Okay, so that's been a part of the healing that I've been on. Um, and so I couldn't hold down a job. So that meant that I had to go back to my old ways of stealing. I grew up in a very violent way, and so violence was always a part of life. But the things that were a part of life that shouldn't have been that way meant that there was the things that were a part of life that should have been there. And for the most part, those things that should have been there weren't there. And so that's why I relied heavily on like criminal. It came from my mind. It was the way that I thought, and of course that led to like me getting in trouble a lot. That meant that snowballed into me feeling more and more lonely as life went on. And so what happened was is that I I had gotten a lot of chances, but I didn't know how to accept help. And by the way, this is a bicycle brand. Just so you know, I'm looking at this. It says Death Gripper. This is I love riding bicycle, and that's what that's about. So, anyways, I just recognized that. I just saw that. But the reason why I bring that up is because um, I had no hope. I didn't have any hope. Didn't even know how to have hope. I didn't know what hope looked like. I didn't really understand things about positivity. There just wasn't that type of discussion. There wasn't that type of language used around the vicinity, in the home, wherever I went. And it just wasn't like that. Times have changed now, though, quite a bit. And I've changed quite a bit, and I'm really grateful for that. But I'll never forget is that I did hit rock bottom, lost everything. And like I said, just put a capital everything here, underline it, and put an exclamation point. Because sometimes I hear people say, yeah, I lost everything. But that wasn't really true. You know, they still had a home. They still had, you know, like a car. They still had a job that they can go back to. It was a feeling of losing everything. But when I say I lost everything, I'm going to be just real upfront and honest with you. I'm going to say I lost everything because that was the truth. And so I started back from the bottom. I realized that it could get a lot worse. And then I realized even at that low point, it could definitely get a lot worse. And so I really started to reach out for help, for my addictions, and also to change the way that I thought, to look at life differently, to do something differently. And I said about that life way in that type of direction, but I also knew that at this time that I also had to walk away from other things. I had to walk away from how I grew up. I had to walk away from the people that I had built friendships with. That was going to be very important for me. So I'm not here to give advice, but certainly that was important for me at that time, and it still is very important for me to create a safe place. And so that's what started to happen. And so I started from the bottom. I would have to go through a lot of um, places where, like homelessness, um, jail, halfway houses. I started to have to make those levels of change. And granted, I had been through a lot of that already, but this time I was different from the inside. The situation, the places may have been the same, but this time I was different. And so I was really learning things that I had never learned before. And that was everything, the emotions that I felt was everything under the sun. Okay? And so what happened was I took a job, and by this time I had lost my freedom. I'd been away for a while. Two, lost, like I said, everything else. Um, and so I really started to rediscover, or no, not even rediscover. The term rediscover would meant that I had found a place and then come back to it. Well, that's not what happened to me. That was my first experience with finding a place of safety. Finding a place within that said, this is what I want for my life, and I'll do absolutely whatever it takes to for that to happen. And so this, I'll get to this, relatives. This does have to do with the stars, okay? I just get to blab on. What can I say? My only hope through all this sort of unrehearsed, raw, unedited, revealing revelation is that maybe somebody out there might relate to it. But anyways, so I went through this change of institutions, and that continued, and I would eventually end up in like what's called like a sober living home. They called it three-quarter way house back then. Nowadays they call them sober living homes. And there was people there from all different backgrounds, all different directions that were heading in all separate directions. A lot of those guys, honestly, some of them guys, may they rest in peace, are dead. Some of them are back in addictions. And I honestly wonder, and I think it's not far-fetched to say that I might be the only one that is still sober. And I don't say that to brag, but I do sort of know some of hearing of what happened to some of them men. So that's why I stick closely to this way of life. But anyway, so I went back to my old job in the packing plant, which is one about the worst job that a person can imagine. It wasn't necessarily cutting meat. It was like doing cleanup. So I was, around a lot of blood, pig parts and stuff like that. It wasn't a really sought after job, but that's at that time I was just coming out of a time where I was absolutely, you couldn't employ me. I was just too big of a risk for you to give me a job. And so at that time, I had to start out that way. I had to start at the bottom, and trust me, relatives, I was grateful. It was a new chance at life, a second chance. Well, I've been given second chances, third chances, but this was the time that I gave myself that chance. And so I was in the sober living home, and I was working graveyard shift. And I was walking to work. And at one time I even walked it, and it was 50 degrees below zero. And I walked, and I think it was probably around 3 miles. Maybe 4 miles, something like that. And I walked to work. But this was my new lease on life, man. That didn't bother me, not at all. I was just sort of high on life, high on change, high on getting a second chance. So life was really working, and you know what? It's still working. I've been sober since those days, but that's a whole nother story. So, I've been a criminal all my life, relatives, long before I ever started, with drugs and alcohol. I've been a criminal all my life. Just never got caught for most of the things that, I was doing. And it was kind of a secret what we were doing. But, anyways, so I was walking to work, and then finally one of the staff members at that sober living home, and he said, "Mike, did you know that there's a bicycle out in the garage that you could use?" And I didn't know that. And I had been a pretty much like been arrested for burglary, theft. Even as a youngster, getting caught stealing, even as a very young juvenile. So I've been stealing all my life, you know what I mean? It was nothing for me to go into a place, even as a child, case it out, and walk out of there knowing what I could take, like even almost sort of like automatically, unconsciously. I don't even mean to think like this, but that's just what happens. That's how much that had become such a habit of mine. Like, I don't even mean to do it, but yet I know what's valuable in there, what I could get away with, what they would know, what was not missing, what they would know right away what was missing, because you don't want to get pinpointed, you know what I mean? You you want to let some time know before, well, anyways. So when they said in the sober living house, they said, you know that you can use that bicycle. Like, it was almost like I wanted to hide. Like, I wanted to, if there was a black curtain in front of me, I wanted to, and it was open, and I wanted to close it in front of me so you couldn't see me. Because my thinking was, are you sure that are you telling me that you're going to trust me with a bicycle? Me? And so it was at that time that my honesty and my self-image was changing. And that was one of the examples that was an indicator that something needed to change. And that indicator was them offering me. I was staying sober. I was going to work on time. I was feeling I was different. I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't hanging around the people that would get me that I always knew. So I was definitely going through a lot of change, and that was very much on the outside, but on the inside too. Holy smokes, that was a very emotional time. And I've been playing a tough guy all my life, which was a lie. I wasn't what people thought that I was trying to get you to think. There was more to me. And I was finding that out. And so when he said, basically, you can use that bicycle, the old me said, you can't trust me. And I wanted to close the curtain. And like I wanted to hide, I wanted to say, you can't trust me, I'll steal that bicycle. But I was living there. And so I let myself be trusted. I accepted somebody trusting me. And that was new. That like hit me. Like, I didn't even know that was happening. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't even know. All I was like was like almost kind of holding my breath going, really? Like on the outside I was probably saying, oh, okay. But inside I was saying, really? Everything that I've done all my life? You're going to trust me with the bicycle? Really? Like, I couldn't believe it. And so what happened is that I'll never forget that night I took that bicycle. It had been a long time since I'd been on a bicycle, because I've been on bicycles, but meaning that I had stole them. which means that I'm making a beeline. I steal the bike. I'm making a beeline to where I need to go, and then I got to stash it. I got to, you got to look over, who saw me? Is there cops? Because this is the middle of the night. You know what I'm saying? So it's not the same sense. But I'll never forget that first night that I took that bicycle. I felt like I was doing something wrong. You know what I mean? Like you can get so used to something and then something comes along that's good, that's part of that healing, that it almost feels wrong. Like I literally wanted to say, no, 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 I'll walk. And I might have even said that. And so the first night that I took that bicycle was I was going down the hill. The sober living home was at the top of the hill, and I was going down the hill, and I'll never forget how free I felt. And it wasn't that I wasn't in handcuffs or there weren't bars in front of me. It was that feeling of trust. And I had relatives. I'm going to tell you this. I had never had that feeling before, ever. I'd never been able to have that feeling in my life up until that point. So this was new. And I'll never forget, I felt like a kid. And I was kind of swerving like this. I was enjoying myself so much. I felt so happy. Now, granted, I was already grateful just to be walking to work. And so what happens was along that course that I would walk to work was I would look up. It was the graveyard shift. So it was like literally 10. I started work at 11. I'd have to start walking, so I would leave like at 10. And I'll never forget looking up. I found this spot, and it was down by the river, the Floyd River in Sioux City. And it was like this old building. Well, it's old now, and they've since torn it down, but it was like this building with brick. And so I would walk along the railroad tracks to kind of get to a shortcut. So I'd be walking behind this building right next to the railroad tracks, literally right next. And there was this pavement, there was this spot of pavement. And I don't know why it was back there, because it wasn't going nowhere. You couldn't drive from the railroad tracks and get up on it. So that must have been an old driveway, and then they built and trapped that section back there. And that was the place that I would rest. Because I would look at the time and I'd say, all right, I'm really early for work, so I'm going to rest. And you know what? I had gone a long time without praying. I had stopped believing because, well, there's a lot of reasons for that. I didn't know how to pray. I forgot. And I didn't believe. I had resentments. I didn't care if you prayed and it helped you. Well, it don't do any good to pray, so I'm not going to do it. And I have no qualms about saying the hell with God, the hell with your angels, and whatever it is that you believe. That's not the way it is for me. And there was probably good evidence to that as well. So I don't beat myself up for thinking that way, but I do like to remember that, because today I do pray. And this isn't for religion. I consider myself a spiritual type person, so that's not what this is about. But my life had been changing so much that I decided to do those type of things. I was like, man, I got to stay out of trouble. I don't want to go back. And so I did give prayer a chance. And so the one time I stopped there, I looked up. I remember I was sitting down and I looked up, and I had never seen that many stars before. Relatives, I would watch TV and people would be going, wow, look at the stars. And, I understood that, but I honestly didn't know that there were that many stars in the sky. And I was a grown man. I was in my mid 20s. And for the first time in my life, I actually understood why people were amazed by the stars. Because I had never seen that many stars before. I didn't know that they existed. I know that sounds crazy. I grew up watching Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek. You know what I mean? But I did not know that there were that many stars in the sky. And I was so amazed. Like, it took my breath away. Like, I was like, oh my God. And I chose that spot. For some reason or another, I started to pray in that spot. Because it was tucked away. I wasn't used to praying, relatives. I didn't want to hear it. And so I think because it was kind of tucked away, nobody could see me, and I felt safe enough, is that I did decide to start praying. But it was those stars, I think, that helped me feel like there's more out there than what I've been seeing. There's a lot more. And so I did start to make that place a place where I would start to give prayer a chance. And I was really cool with that, man. I was like happy. And so when it talks about stars, and it talks about stars being in the dark and that they're always there, even if it's bright out, even if it's noon, or the stars are always there. And they're asking us to kind of think about life that way, I suppose. Like, even during the darkest times, the stars are lit up, are the brightest. But even during the days where everything's bright, they're still there. And I'll share this last before I go. How shall I say it? Is that those are the things I think that saved my life, to be honest with you, because if I went back to the old way, I wouldn't be here today, relatives. It would have been long history. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Relatives, I'm going to tell you what. If I would have went back to my old ways, I would not be here today. I guarantee you that. I know that. But eventually, I would start to learn that I too could have a vision. I too could do things. I could accomplish things. Now remember that I didn't know that before. But eventually what happened was, and I'll just cut right to for the benefit of time, because I do want to make it to the library. Eventually I would go to tribal university. First of all, I had quit school at the beginning of my sophomore year in high school, so my lifestyle, my new lifestyle, also I was able to get my GED. And some people might think that that's funny, but anybody that decides to do whatever it is that they decide that they want to do, I'm all for it. I want to give them a standing ovation. especially if you come from a place where you're poverty, where there's violence, like what I described. Especially if it's like that, I want to stand up and I want to give you a standing ovation. Okay, because we've had to work harder. We've had to work harder just to stay alive, let alone to do what it is, however it is the vision created for us. Because my idea of success might look completely different from your idea of success. My idea of success is being able to is still pretty much like that, is to have these things as part of my life. The root, the foundation of that. Well, eventually, I would, get my GED, and I would attend a tribal university. There's a lot more in between that I'd like to discuss. It was up and down, up and down. It was hard. It was difficult. It was heartbreaking just to get to that point. But one of the professors, who he is now gone, and may he rest in peace, was a man from my own nation, was a man from my own tribe. I'll just put it that way. He didn't know that I was like scouting him out. Like, I needed role models. You know what I mean? I need positive role models. I need to see men and women, but it was particularly interesting for me to see other Native men making a difference, doing things, like creating change, being a motivator, being a source of inspiration. And he was one of them. That was going to be really important for the development of my own positive self-image. To see a Native man making a difference, creating, inspiring, having goals, and doing those type of things. And I would always pay attention to him because of the way that his demeanor was. Like, I felt safe to what he said. I could relax. I could listen. I didn't have to like be on the defensive. And that was true with women, and that was true with every aspect. That I could actually be at ease. I could relax. And then when that happens, and then I could start to learn that type of life. I could start to let people get close to me. Those walls that I thought that I needed to always have up would start to come down. And then they go back up, and then they would come down, and then they would go back, and then eventually they started staying down longer than they were up. But he told us a story one time. He was an artist, and this was in one of the, this was at a tribal university, so everything was tribal, man. I love that, man. I love that. Because they understood what it was like to hit rock bottom there. They weren't judgmental. Everybody was pretty much grew up poor. They taught us about what happened to our people. They taught us that the message was clear, that it was good to be who you were. And they backed that up by teachings. And so he told me one time a story about the stars. And now I kind of know a lot of different stories about the stars, but this is really important. He said that one time when he was a kid on the reservation, the Missouri River is really a big deal. It's a big lake. It creates a big lake. There's awesome fishing there, free swimming. And he said that as a youngster, he actually drowned, and that he had been under the water for so long that he was dying. And he said what happened was that he left his body, and somebody was carrying him. He didn't know who, but they were carrying him. They were like flying. And then they were out into space and moving towards the stars. And whoever was carrying him was like comforting him. Like it wasn't scary. Whoever it was like a relative, was somebody that loved him. He said he didn't know who it was. And so they were traveling further and further away from Earth, and they were out into the sky, the space, the dark space, moving towards the stars. And then the voice started to, like, was calming and would tell him, and he said, you're not ready. And so at that time, he said that then they turned around. He was carrying him. By the way, this is paint. He was carrying him, and they turned him around. And they started going back. And then they saw all these lights. And so he thought that they were stars. But as they got closer, they were lights. And as they got closer, he said that some of the lights were bright and some of the lights were like dim, very dim, almost like you could see them. There was like all different types of brightness, and there was all different types of dimness. And so what happened was this spirit that was carrying him, because he said he said that he thought that they were cities. He then knew, I'm going back to Earth. And then he saw all these lights and he thought, oh, that's city lights. But as they got closer and closer, he noticed some were dim, some were lit up. And he said that voice said, it's not your time. And he said that, do you see those lights? Those are people. And he said, we're taking you back because now from here to this day forward, those people with dim lights, you're going to help them become bright. You're going to help them. And so that was the turning point is in his own life. That's what, like, gave him another chance. Like, turned him into another direction, changed him. Like he had died. They literally, he was going to die. And, like, gave him, like, new breath. Breathed something new life into him. Not only gave him another chance, but also worked with him to say, this is what you're going to do. And so he told us that story. And he was telling us why he was there and why he was working with us. And he, since him and his wife would take us into their home, they took me into Sweat Lodge. They invited us and fed us traditional meals. And he always said, you're all artists. Every single one of you is artistic. You're all artists. I'll never forget that he said that, because guess what? I say that too now. I'll say it on Facebook. I'll say it in front of people. Like, he said things that I remember because I remember the impact that they had on me. I never heard anybody say that to me. I had never, I kind of understood where he was coming from, because I had been given another chance too. And that's the reason why I was there. And he was there because he had been given another chance, and he was giving back. And you know what? I think I'm probably at that age now to where he was at that age then. And so I didn't have the same dream as he did, but I have the same type of goals that he did. And he's since moved on to the spirit world, so he did make that trip, only this time he didn't come back. But he did live up to what that guiding spirit told him that he should do. Because I'm one of the ones that he brightened. So I will never forget that. I will never forget him. And he didn't do anything like super extraordinary, but it was in everything that he had said. You could feel the sincerity behind it. You knew what he said was true. And it helped me with the walls that I kept around myself. And it helped me to learn how to use language in a way that is going to help with the vision that I feel like I have for myself, to help to be effective, to help with other people who might have been at that point where I was at. So in a sense, I became like him. And that I realized was what I wanted. Looking back on it now. But I knew that at the time too. But I was, like I said, I was scouting him out. And so to me, that's still a part of the person that I want to be. Now, the vision wasn't quite the way that he had put it, but certainly it came. It took me to a place and it said, same thing, follow me, come with me. And then it produced a vision that was very similar, like the same type of message. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to share. That's what I thought about the stars. Is that at one point I couldn't see those. And I don't know, that's part of the great mystery, is how it is that I ended up getting another chance. I don't know. But certainly, I feel a lot of feelings for that extra chance at life. So yeah, that's what I got out of that reading, out of the stars, and that's just what I got. Maybe you got something a little bit different, or maybe you kind of feel the same way that I do too. But I think it's important that you understand, no matter where you're at in your life, is that you too have that light. Whether it's a time when you're going through, whether it's dim so somebody else can help you, like lighten up, or not like that, not like lighten up, but like for that time to shine. Or it's that time when yours is shining brightly and then you see somebody else's who is dim. So that tells me, from my own experience, is that this is a part of who we are as spirits. Because there are times we're not, like, he didn't see bodies, he saw lights. And I saw that too. I don't have time to explain that. But there's a lot of examples for that. And so, like he said, you're all artists. And so I believe that about everybody. And so I believe that we're all spirits and that we all have lights. Oh man, I got some good, real stories to tell. Whew. I like to tell them too. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and I hope that you got something out of this video. I hope that um, you decide to share. Maybe you look up, or maybe you look within, or maybe somebody sees you. I don't know, you know. But I know there's a lot of people out there that need help. And and we're able to do that. We're able to do that. We're able to be there for each other. I really believe that. Um, so I could go on and on, but it's been almost an hour. I do want to get to the library and do a little bit of studying. But I could take another hour just talking about more stories, relatives. True stories. You know what I mean? Making more memories out here. Creating new stories in life. Recreating. Changing things. Inspiring. Receiving that. And thinking about the people that came before us. But yeah, okay. I think I will probably go. But thank you for watching. I just encourage you to make a comment or think about things like that. And if you ever want to get a hold of me, I got time these days. You're welcome to get a hold of me. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the reading. Again, I have no idea ever what I'm going to say. This will go on YouTube. I'll probably put it up there tonight. But I do want to also just leave you as this. I always treat people and see people as a relative. So that's what I see people, whoever sees this video, as a relative. And so that's part of like my goal, is to continue to be that way and to find out what life is like when I am that, like that. You know what I mean? So, yeah. All right. I've said what I needed to say. I'll talk to you again soon, relatives.